and you just stick to your point of view without any kind of knowledge. It's just, and we could see that we still have some arguments and disagreements with our brothers in the Arab world, and we can see how many of our arguments has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with aqidah, has nothing to do with knowledge-based disagreement. It has nothing to do with that. It's just because of personal disagreements, political disagreements, and then they build everything else above that. And you can see the evidence very clearly because call them names. This is not purely about theological matters, but political matters and strategic positions, or whatever you call it. A person, and I'm talking here, for example, about Daniel Haqiqatjou, which is a person who I admired actually, and I liked the way he was doing his da'wah and such. I could have some, differences and things that I don't agree with at first, but then things went far away from just what happens sometimes, that some people do not want, division, and that's what we all want. We don't want division. Right. We have one group and another group, yeah, and there is a third group that would emerge. Okay, let's forget about these differences. So what I'm calling for is very simple. I call for that in Arabic, and now started doing that in English. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ba'd. Our subject today will not take that time, but I believe it's very important. I'm talking about unity. You can see the conflicts around the world, not just between Muslims and non-Muslims. I'm talking about between us. And I believe you can see a lot of that even in social media between dua, scholars and such. So what about that, and what about unity? What I would say is that unity is of course one of the greatest principles in our religion, and you know that. We have a lot of verses in Quran and hadiths by the Prophet, peace be upon him, talking about unity. But does that mean in any way that we should ignore all differences and pretend that they don't exist? Of course not. So despite unity is a desired thing, and but that it does not mean in any way erasing valid distinctions. It means actually the opposite. It means that we need to understand where are these differences and which differences are acceptable. We call things like الخلاف المقبول أو الخلاف المعتبر. So if there are any kind of acceptable kind of differences, and which ones deviate actually from the true path. So there are differences we must highlight between and to be able to differentiate between those, I mean the differences that we can accept and the differences that we should acknowledge as and describe as deviations. We should have the differences between innovation, bid'ah, let's say, I'm not sure if that's the right translation for it, but let's say bid'ah, yeah, innovation in deen, and inventing some kind of religious beliefs or acts or such, which is something that's not sunnah, that's not what the religion originally is. So we should have this differentiation between innovation on one hand and sunnah on the other hand. We should have the differentiation between faith and disbelief, of course, Islam wa kufr, Iman wa kufr. We should have a differentiation between the truth and falsehood. And our goal is to call people, actually, ourselves included, first of all, to the one straight path. وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل فتفرق بكم عن سبيله. So that's what we've been asked to do. To call people for that one path, one straight path. وأن هذا صراطي مستقيما فاتبعوه ولا تتبعوا السبل. Not to the divided, scattered ways, yeah, that are deviated from that one straight path. So you can see the oneness in the path, which means unity actually. So we must invite ourselves first and others to the Quran and Sunnah, not to bid'ah, innovation, deviation, call it what you want. So, but let's be honest here. So I know this is a huge, a huge subject to talk about. I mean, Sunnah and bid'ah, the differences, and what we call as hadith al-iftiraq, and yeah. So let's be honest. I mean, many of our debates are misplaced actually. They are not about, Sunnah and bid'ah. They are not about iman and kufr per se actually. They are very misplaced, very away. They occur far away from the truth points of contention. So let me give you some examples of that. So let's take, for example, the oppositions that labeled as Wahhabi teachings, for example, yeah, Wahhabi teachings, Imam al-Da'wah al-Najdiyya, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, and the teachings afterwards, and you can hear many issues critics would usually raise as critical points, yeah. But of course, these are not in any way unique to one group. They exist in Hanafi traditions. I'm mentioning Hanafis because the ones who do that usually are from Hanafi background and such. So, and another example of that, if we want to talk about much about the critics that some would oppose in Salafis, for example, yeah. You can also find these in Ash'ari teachings. So why to make those points of critic, of these critical points about this group or these kind of teachings, why they are there in your group? So why do we deceive ourselves and others about the nature of these differences? Why do we avoid addressing the real issue? We avoid addressing the real issue. That's what I'm saying, yeah? So let's be clear here. What are these critical points that usually are raised, especially in social media? I mean, talking with public, with general, with lay people. I'm speaking about the topics. So let me say it that way. I mean, it's harsh to say it that way in a way, but that's the truth. So I'm speaking about the topics deliberately emphasized to mislead people. Not the real point of disagreement, not the real point of contention. So, for example, this is actually a major part of it. Discussions about takfir and tabdi'. Takfir, takfir declaring others as non-believers, and tabdi', declaring others as innovators and, adding things to deen and religion and such. So things about, this group are takfiris and they do takfir, such. That's usually how they present their arguments. Yeah, Wahhabis are, they do takfir for those who, go to the graves and such. And so these issues around tabdi' and takfir, and you can see it very clearly, even when they discuss the most actual deviance They talk about takfir and tabdi' also, despite they have more deviant points. They have a lot of more things to talk about, most important things to talk about. Yeah? But we always talk with people about tabdi' and takfir and to describe them as the major issues in any deviant group. So if we are talking about Khawarij, yeah, it's all about takfir and tabdi'. If we are talking about Madkhalis, it's all about takfir and tabdi'. If Madkhalis would talk about Ikhwan, it's always about tabdi' and takfir. If Ash'aris would talk about Salafis, it's always about takfir and tabdi'. And if Salafis would talk about Ash'aris, they also talk about their tabdi' and takfir. And if Wahhabis want to respond to Hanafis, they talk about takfir and tabdi'. So why these issues are often exaggerated and portrayed as unique to specific group or methodology or somewhat. And we all know that the reality that these issues, I mean tabdi', which means that my way is different than your way, and I have a judgment on that, of course. And that's there. And that exists across all schools, or religious groups, or ideologies actually. Not just about within Islam, within subgroups and such. No, that's there. If you have a point of view, if you have a set of beliefs, of course you would see the other the people who take the other point, the other side of it, as different, and these differences can vary between takfir and tabdi', and we have grades of that. Of course, that would be the situation. So why to make that emphasis on tabdi' and takfir when you criticize your opponent? But guess what? That's what we do to deceive people and to deceive ourselves first. And what's even more significant, and it's an irony, I would say, but we have this important thing which is often overlooked, I would say, is something like some kind of concealment of the deeper real differences between us and the true motivations behind these disputes and the arguments that we can see. So we can see many of these arguments and arguments, I would say, yeah. These arguments are usually fueled with what? Think about this with me. I mean, you don't need to hear it from me to understand what I'm talking about and to get it. Is that actually about theological kind of argument? Is that a religious argument? Is that something that, you know, I want the truth and I seek it, and that's why I'm talking about this? I have knowledge-based argument talking about this issue. Is that so? You can see it very clearly, very obvious to anyone who just take a bigger, you know, a look for the bigger picture and just take a step backward and see the picture. It's very obvious. So you can see many arguments are fueled not by, in any way, theological concerns, not by knowledge-based concerns, scholarly concerns. No. But by hidden agendas, I would say. Personal, even personal agendas, personal rivalries, I would say. And yeah, so can you see it now? So let me give you some examples to know what I mean by, you know, I don't know how to describe it actually, but maybe if I would say the discussion about the theological arguments, the arguments about the theological matters on the basis of political positions, that can be very dangerous. I mean, I believe it's enough for me to understand, it's enough for me to understand how dangerous is the earth by just knowing that this is just the opposite of honesty. It's just deceitfulness. It's just, why are you doing that? Why not to talk about the actual argument, the actual motive of yours, what you think is actually true? What is the actual truth what is the truth that you are defending and you believe in? So why to go around all of this? So if I would, for example, another example, so, and it applies for many, many things nowadays, and you can see it very clearly. I mean, just take into consideration these examples of, the war, Gaza, Iran, Israel, and such, and you take into consideration Syria and what happened there, and of course Taliban, and take all that into consideration and think about this. Some individuals, I wouldn't say some, many people, they amplify debates about theological issues. But you can see it clearly that these are distractions from their underlying political positions. Political positions, I'm talking about politics, pure politics. It's about. So they may align with, for example, they may align with particular regime, or even movement, Hamas, Iran, Saudi, Syria, the new regime of Syria, maybe some specific regime, Jordanian regime, they just align with that particular regime or movement. So they are with Ikhwan Muslimin, they are with Salafis, with Hanafis, with Diyubandis, whatever. And they use religious arguments just to justify their alliances. And of course, on the other hand, to discredit their opponents. And you can remember many discussions around that. You know about that, So consider, for example, the debate around the debate that started around the surrounding alliance with regimes and groups. I don't know how to say it, but if we are talking about, for example, Gaza and Iran and such, a person, and I'm talking here, for example, about Daniel Haqiqatju, which is a person who I admired actually, and I liked the way he was doing his da'wah and such. I could have some, differences and things that I don't agree with at first, but then things went far away from just small disagreement. So it started with more conflicts about political issues, and then religious and theological arguments would come afterwards. So to talk about, because the disagreement with Saudi Arabia and such, and the new regime and the changes that happens there. So the theological conflict about طاعة ولاة الأمر, to follow the lead of the, I would say, ولاة الأمر, I don't know how to translate it, the leaders and the governors and such. So that is a theological argument, and it should be regardless of what's going on politically. But no, he went through that maze, I would say, and these wars with, and whoever is opposing him would be madkhali and bootlicker. That doesn't look great, I would say. So, and the same thing happened when the Gaza war started, and people started to talk about Hamas and Iran and this alliance, and that should not in any way underestimate the religious differences, and I would say the kufr of the beliefs that Rafida would have and such, all of these things, But a person may just downplay the dangerous sectarian and the theological implications of such alliance just because they have that political perspective. And of course, on the other hand, that would not be enough for them. It's just to say what they think and to justify that and to have some excuses that may be valid in some way. No, that would not be enough for many of them. They also will vilify those who oppose them and call them names. This is not purely about theological matters, but political matters and strategic positions or whatever you call it. So but it's just, a political matter, a political discussion, a political position and such. We call it maybe sometimes harakiya, which means, things about pragmatic, things about my political view, my political position regarding some regimes, some movements, and what I think is the right way to go around politics again. To run and what are my positions regarding that. So all of these things, but dressed as religious discourses. So that's sad actually. That's sad actually. شر البلية ما يضحك. In some cases, I would say in most cases, so these political leanings, if that's to say, they dominate the narrative. People criticize one another, not over theological or scholarly principles. And we could see that we still have some arguments and disagreements with our brothers in the Arab world, and we can see how many of our arguments has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with aqidah, has nothing to do with knowledge-based disagreement. It has nothing to do with that. It's just because of personal disagreements, political disagreements, and then they build everything else above that. And you can see the evidence very clearly because they can align with someone who is very different from them, very deviant from their path regarding the theological background and the theological views and such. They can align with them, they can defend them, they can be just with them. Yeah, al-insaf, they will talk about insaf and be just and kind and everything with that person and with that or group or whatever. But because they have the same political alignment, you go with each other. But you, as I'm your brother, I have the same theological, all the bases. We are on the same page and everything. But political wise, I have some disagreement with you. And maybe it's not that disagreement. It's sometimes about maslaha and mafsada. It's about what's the best now. And then you just declare war on me. So that's not religion, that's not theology at all. It's not about aqidah, it's not about religion at all. So it's just political alignments of, control the scene. So the real motivations are buried, I would say, beneath layers and layers of religious discussions, rhetorics. But they are there underneath. And that would just mislead, not just onlookers, not just the general public, not just Muslims in general. They also can mislead us as participants in these disagreements and arguments, because sometimes when you enter some kind of conflict, you can be lost within the maze of the conflict and the, I say something, you say something, I respond to that, they respond to the respond, and they respond to the respond to the respond and such. And you just stick to your point of view without any kind of knowledge. It's just because you feel you're right. So why we deceive ourselves? So it's 23 minutes now. So why we deceive ourselves, and why we deceive others about the nature of these differences? Why do we avoid addressing the real issues? So that's why I believe fiqh al-nafs, to know yourself, it's just a must. It's a must for everyone to know what you want. What are the differences that what's the point of conflict between us? Do you know what is that? You say something I don't disagree with. That's not what I disagree with. That's not what I criticize about you. Why are you still telling that, talking about that on and on again? So what I'm calling for is very simple. I call for that in Arabic, and now started doing that in English. And I will not be bored by doing that over and over again. I'm calling for a simple thing, but of course a profound thing. I'm calling for honesty and sincerity. I'm not sure about the proper translation of الصدق. صدق صاد والدال والقاف. الصدق. أن تكون صادقا. To be honest and sincere. So honesty and sincerity in seeking the truth. I want the truth. I actually want to know. Honesty in offering advice, doing أمر بالمعروف نهي عن المنكر, offering advice, that's نصيحة. Honesty and sincerity in doing so. And honesty and sincerity in conflicts and disagreements. And that would not happen in any way if we keep our personal biases and personal gains front. Honesty and sincerity means not exaggerating our differences, but of course acknowledging them. Of course not mispresenting the views of others. It means to ask your opponents, what do you mean by this? Is this what you mean? Is that what you want? Is that actually what you've meant? And then you can disagree with them. It means engaging with sincerity, with honesty, and clarity, of course. Without any deception. Without prejudice, I would say. At least without deception. Let's start with that. Let's make a start with this, at least. Just with honesty. Imagine, that's a dream, I believe, a good dream. Imagine how much progress we could make if we approach every conversation, every disagreement, every discussion with this principle in mind. I've been calling for this for years, I believe, and I will continue to do so. فستذكرون ما أقول لكم وأفوض أمري إلى الله. You will remember what I say, Anyways, but let's get back to the talk about unity. So unity is not just about, we've talked about this maybe, it's not just about blending all views into one. That's not right. It's about recognizing valid differences. While we are doing that, of course, we should strive for a common purpose, which I believe you all know. That's truth. It's about, I'm still talking about unity, so it's about pointing people to the straight path, the only straight path, the one path. وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ. That's unity, one path. We guide each other, we point each other to, we help each other to reach that path, not the diverse roads and ways and scattered ways. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ. And we have many verses in Quran and hadiths and sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that are central to this issue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يقول, Allah says, إن الذين فرقوا دينهم وكانوا شيعا لست منهم في شيء إنما أمرهم إلى الله ثم ينبئهم بما كانوا يفعلون. So, and what that exactly means, that Allah tells us that إن الذين فرقوا دينهم, indeed those who have divided their religion, so that's against unity. That's why unity is very important. So those who divided their religion and come sects, Shi'an, Firaq, subgroups, groups, call it whatever. And those who divided their religion and become groups and sects, the talk is with the Prophet, peace be upon him, are not associated with them in anything. That's not religion. That's against religion to have these sects. But again, that does not mean that all of them are one and we should just unite regardless. No, we unite by what? You can hear the other verse, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا. That's where we can unite. Hold to, and so Allah command us to hold firmly, to hold, call it whatever. To hold firmly to the robe of Allah, which is Quran and Sunnah. We need to hold to that robe all together, جميعا, and do not divide, and do not become divided. ولا تفرقوا. So I believe our goal must be just to uphold the truth, not to create further divisions or avoid addressing the differences. So it's not either or. Okay, so that's what I believe. To uphold the truth, to seek the truth sincerely, honestly, yeah? Not to create any kind of further divisions. But on the other side, in parallel to that, in companion, I would say, to that, to avoid addressing what truly matters. Because sometimes some people would just avoid division by causing further division. So for example, we have two groups, yeah? And one is the truth, and one has the truth, and the other is the deviant part, and the deviant group, I would say. And that's what we have in our Ummah. We believe in Islam that there is always someone who has the truth because of Allah's guidance, and Quran and Sunnah are there. So we have a group with the truth and the group who are deviant. So what happens sometimes that some people do not want, division, and that's what we all want. We don't want division. So the solution for that division is for the deviants to align with the truth. واعتصموا بحبل الله. That's how things work, and we should compassionately give them advice, nasiha, amr bil ma'ruf, nahy al munkar, to be one ummah, holding to Quran and Sunnah. That's how unity comes. Not the other way. What's the other way? The other way is something else. It's something like we have one group and another group, yeah? And there is a third group that would emerge. Okay, let's forget about these differences. And what? We make another third group that see these two groups as, these are, what do you call them? متشددين. They hold their views that are hysterical views and such. So anyways, but what happens actually is something like, there were two groups, and now we have a third group that sees that conflict doesn't matter. Okay, so now you have a third group. You're making further division. While you think you're doing good, you're not doing that actually. So what I think is, so if I would ask how do we move forward, I believe first we must acknowledge our differences. And I'm very frustrated about everyone trying to hide that, no, we are one ummah, nothing would divide us, and everyone is, and sometimes they even, distort history and change historical facts, that there were differences, and there are differences, and there are some deviant groups. There are even scholars that were respected, and they have some, we can benefit from what they say, but they have deviances, and maybe they are deviant in general, but they are scholars in some aspects of religion and such. But no, we just ignore all of that and pretend that nothing is wrong, everything is fine. And whenever someone gets to seek some knowledge and to know about things, they will be surprised about seeing, okay, there were groups, there were a huge dispute and argument, and actually a war in a way between Ahl al-Hadith and Ahl al-Ra'i. Ahl al-Hadith and Ahl al-Ra'i. There are Hanafis in one side in a way, and others on the other side. And it was a huge, anyone who knows what Ahl al-Hadith would say about Ahl al-Ra'i and vice versa. And maybe further and much wider difference, I would say, and a bigger gap between Ahl al-Hadith on one side and Ahl al-Kalam, for example, on the other side. And that has led to many of maybe further, not just tabdi', but takfir and tabdi'. And that was from both sides. And that's not necessarily false. Because they have different religions in a way, different point of views, sometimes even the nature of God himself. So just to pretend that that's not there, that would not solve the problem. So to acknowledge our differences without allowing them to blind us to the bigger picture that is related to seeking the truth, wherever is that, whatever is that, and to seek unity with that, because seeking the truth, if all of us want the truth, that's unity per se. If we reach that, that is unity plus. So that's the first thing, I believe, to acknowledge differences to acknowledge differences properly, I would say. The second thing would be, it is a must again. I believe we must approach every disagreement, every argument with sincerity and honesty. And that's what we should remind ourselves with, and remind our opponents with, and remind the lay people, not just to deceive them to be with us, just to deceive them to like our channels and to subscribe to our channels and like our videos and share them, just to get some, followers or such. To teach people that sincerity and honesty is a must. Not to use fallacies and logical fallacies to deceive people. Not just to use that, propaganda about takfir and tabdi' to make theological arguments. That should not be the way that honest, sincere people disagree or argue about issues. So sincerity is a must, I believe. Maybe a third thing would be, and also a must, that we should aim for unity. We should aim for unity. وأن أمتكم أمة واحدة, one ummah. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا. You hold firmly to the robe of Allah. So that's a must. And that's, but the issue is that unity is rooted actually in truth. That's how unity would come. Not by anything else, not by straying away from any kind of differences, not by ignorance, not by, of course, media propaganda, not by deceive other people, not by unite people on yourself or your subgroup or such. It's by seeking the truth, not in compromise, of course, not in deception, of course, not on personal gains or group kind of gains or something. So if I would summarize that, I would say the key is to hold ourselves to a higher kind of standard speak the truth, make nasiha and dua but about, just to mention this, that's important, about nasiha and patience, because fitna happens when, so you need to speak the truth, do nasiha, do amr bil ma'ruf nahi al munkar, with patience. So you should advise, but of course with wisdom, and you should disagree with integrity. But all of that comes together, because fitna happens when you just say the truth without being patient about it. These are the traits that can build, I would say, and actually they build bridges, and they don't just put walls between us. Because I do believe that there are some mubtadi'ah, there are some kuffar, but even though in our religion we want to build bridges, because that's what we are. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. You are actually كنتم خير أمة. You are the best nation that has produced to the world. You just tell the people what are the right things to do and what are the wrong things not to do. So let's be truthful, in seeking the truth, I would say, and maybe seeking the right path ourselves, and to be honest and sincere in doing so, and in our efforts to guide others, even our opponents, even our brothers who may be unjust with us, maybe somehow strayed away or something. I believe we can overcome the unnecessary division, at least, and build an ummah that aligns with what Allah wants. But of course, وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ, the differences would remain. We will not erase that at all. There is Jannah, and there will be people who go to that heaven, and نسأل الله عز وجل أن نكون منهم. And there is a hellfire, and there are people, they are going there. So, but we should do whatever we can and what we have to do ourselves, sincerely. Okay, thank you so much. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. هذا والله تعالى أعلم، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم.